Alcatraz Island is a small rocky island situated in the waters of San Francisco Bay, approximately 1.25 miles, 2 kilometers, from the city of San Francisco. Its isolated location played a major role in its selection as a prison site because the island is surrounded by cold water, strong ocean currents, and unpredictable tides. These natural barriers made it extremely difficult for prisoners to escape and reach the mainland safely. Before becoming a federal prison, the island served several purposes, including a military fortress and a military prison, due to its strategic position at the entrance of the bay. The island offers clear views of San Francisco, the famous Golden Gate Bridge, and the surrounding coastline. Despite being close enough for prisoners to see the city lights at night, the challenging waters created a powerful psychological reminder of their separation from freedom. The unique geography of Alcatraz contributed greatly to its reputation as one of the most secure and feared prisons in American history. In 1934, Alcatraz was officially transformed from a military prison into a federal penitentiary under the control of the United States government. During the early 1930s, the country was facing a rise in organized crime, bank robberies, and gang-related violence. Many criminals continued to cause problems even while serving sentences in other prisons, leading authorities to seek a facility that could securely house the most dangerous and disruptive inmates. Alcatraz was chosen because its isolated location in the middle of San Francisco Bay provided a natural security barrier that few other prisons could match. The prison was designed to hold inmates who had repeatedly broken rules, attempted escapes, or posed serious security risks in other federal institutions. Extensive renovations were carried out before the prison opened. Steel bars were reinforced, security systems were upgraded, and strict procedures were introduced to ensure complete control over prisoners. Every aspect of prison life was carefully regulated, from meal times and work assignments to communication with the outside world. When Alcatraz opened as a federal prison on August 11, 1934, it was considered the most secure correctional facility in the United States. Unlike many other prisons of the era, Alcatraz emphasized discipline and order above rehabilitation. Prisoners were granted only a few basic rights, including food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Any additional privileges had to be earned through good behavior. This strict approach helped establish Alcatraz's reputation as a place where troublesome inmates were sent when they could no longer be managed elsewhere. The prison quickly became known as the final destination for some of America's most notorious criminals. Its reputation spread throughout the country, and the very name Alcatraz became associated with maximum security, strict discipline, and the federal government's determination to control the most dangerous offenders in the prison system. Alcatraz earned its reputation because it was used to confine some of the most dangerous, violent, and notorious criminals in the United States. Unlike ordinary prisons, Alcatraz was not designed to hold large numbers of inmates. Instead, it served as a special maximum security facility for prisoners who had proven difficult to control in other federal institutions. Many of these inmates had histories of violence, repeated escape attempts, involvement in organized crime, or persistent violations of prison rules. When authorities believed that a prisoner posed a serious threat to security, Alcatraz was often considered the ultimate solution. One of the most famous inmates was Al Capone, the powerful Chicago gangster who became one of the most recognizable figures in American criminal history. Although Capone had once enjoyed significant influence and wealth, Alcatraz's strict regulations ensured that he received no special treatment. Another well-known prisoner was George "Machine Gun" Kelly, who gained notoriety for kidnapping and other serious crimes. The prison also held Robert Stroud, a convicted murderer who became famous through books and films, even though he was not allowed to keep birds while imprisoned on Alcatraz. The presence of such notorious criminals contributed greatly to the prison's legendary status. Newspapers frequently reported on the inmates held there, and the public became fascinated by the idea of a prison reserved for America's most feared offenders. Many prisoners viewed a transfer to Alcatraz as a punishment in itself because of the institution's harsh environment and strict discipline. The prison administration carefully monitored every aspect of inmate behavior, and guards maintained constant vigilance to prevent violence, escape attempts, or disruptions. Despite housing many dangerous individuals, Alcatraz maintained a relatively small population compared to other federal prisons. This allowed officials to exercise tighter control over inmates and closely supervise daily activities. Prisoners followed rigid schedules, worked assigned jobs, and lived under strict rules that limited their freedom and interactions. The combination of notorious inmates, intense security measures, and the prison's isolated location helped create an image of Alcatraz as the ultimate prison for criminals who were considered too dangerous or troublesome for any other institution. One of the main reasons Alcatraz became famous was its unique location in the middle of San Francisco Bay. The prison was built on Alcatraz Island, a rocky island separated from the mainland by more than a mile of open water. Although the distance may not seem great, the surrounding environment created an extremely challenging obstacle for anyone attempting to escape. Prisoners not only had to leave the heavily guarded prison itself, but also survive the dangerous journey across the bay. The waters around Alcatraz are known for being exceptionally cold throughout the year. Temperatures often remain low enough to cause hypothermia, a condition in which the body loses heat faster than it can produce it. A swimmer exposed to these conditions could quickly become exhausted, lose muscle control, and struggle to stay afloat. Even strong swimmers face serious risks because the cold water could weaken them long before they reach shore. In addition to the cold temperatures, the bay contains powerful currents that can carry swimmers away from their intended destination. These currents change direction depending on tides and weather conditions, making navigation extremely difficult. A prisoner attempting to swim to freedom could easily be pushed into deeper waters or carried far from the mainland. Strong winds and rough waves often made conditions even more dangerous, particularly at night when many escape attempts were planned. The prison's location also provided excellent visibility for guards. Watchtowers and security posts allowed officers to monitor both the prison grounds and the surrounding waters. Searchlights illuminated the area during nighttime hours, making it difficult for escapees to move unnoticed. Boats operated by law enforcement agencies could quickly respond if suspicious activity was detected around the island. Because of these natural and man-made barriers, many people believed that escaping from Alcatraz was impossible. The combination of cold water, strong currents, changing tides, constant surveillance, and the distance from shore created a formidable defense system that required no walls beyond the island itself. This reputation became one of the prison's defining characteristics and helped establish Alcatraz as the most secure and feared prison in the United States. Numerous inmates considered escape, but very few were willing to risk the dangers waiting beyond the prison walls and the treacherous waters that surrounded the island. Among all the criminals who were imprisoned at Alcatraz, Al Capone remains the most famous. Born in New York and later becoming the leader of a powerful criminal organization in Chicago, Capone rose to prominence during the era of Prohibition in the United States. During this period, the production and sale of alcoholic beverages were illegal, creating opportunities for organized crime groups to earn enormous profits through bootlegging, smuggling, gambling operations, and other illegal activities. Through these activities, Capone built a vast criminal empire and became one of the most recognizable figures in American history. Capone's influence extended far beyond ordinary criminal activity. His organization controlled numerous illegal businesses and was associated with violence, corruption, and intimidation. Newspapers across the country frequently reported on his activities, making him a household name. Although authorities suspected him of involvement in many serious crimes, he was ultimately convicted in 1931 for tax evasion rather than violent offenses. He received an 11-year prison sentence, which was considered a major victory for federal law enforcement. Before arriving at Alcatraz, Capone was imprisoned at other facilities where he reportedly enjoyed certain privileges due to his fame and connections. However, when he was transferred to Alcatraz in 1934, the situation changed dramatically. The prison administration was determined to ensure that no inmate received special treatment, regardless of reputation or status. At Alcatraz, Capone was treated like every other prisoner and required to follow the same strict rules and regulations. Life inside the prison was far different from the luxurious lifestyle Capone had once enjoyed. He lived in a small cell, followed a rigid daily schedule, and was closely monitored by prison staff. His ability to communicate with the outside world was heavily restricted, and he no longer had access to the influence he once exercised on the streets of Chicago. The strict environment demonstrated the federal government's commitment to maintaining order and discipline within the institution. During his time at Alcatraz, Capone's health gradually declined. He suffered from complications related to illnesses that had affected him for years, and his physical and mental condition worsened over time. Despite his declining health, his presence at Alcatraz attracted significant public attention. Visitors, journalists, and historians continued to be fascinated by the idea that one of America's most notorious gangsters was confined within the prison's walls. Capone's imprisonment became an important part of the Alcatraz story. His fame helped increase public interest in the prison, and his experience illustrated how even the most powerful criminals could be subjected to the strict discipline and control that defined life on the island. His association with Alcatraz remains one of the primary reasons the prison continues to occupy such a prominent place in American history and popular culture. One of the defining features of Alcatraz was its reputation for strict discipline and exceptionally strong security. The prison was specifically designed to house inmates who were considered difficult to control in other correctional facilities. Many prisoners sent to Alcatraz had histories of violence, repeated rule violations, escape attempts, or involvement in organized crime. Because of this, prison officials developed a system that emphasized order, control, and constant supervision. Every aspect of daily life inside the prison was governed by detailed regulations. Prisoners were expected to follow a strict schedule from the moment they woke up until lights out at night. Meals, work assignments, recreation periods, and cell inspections all occurred at designated times. Any deviation from the rules could result in disciplinary action. The administration believed that maintaining a highly structured environment would reduce disorder and make it easier to manage inmates. Security measures were visible throughout the prison. The cell blocks were constructed with reinforced steel bars, heavy doors, and secure locking mechanisms. Guards regularly patrolled corridors and monitored inmate activities. Watchtowers provided additional surveillance, allowing officers to observe different areas of the prison and the surrounding island. Searchlights were used during nighttime hours to ensure that no suspicious movements went unnoticed. Communication between inmates was also carefully controlled. Prison officials closely monitored interactions to prevent the planning of escapes, acts of violence, or other prohibited activities. Mail was inspected, visits were regulated, and access to the outside world was limited. Prisoners had to earn certain privileges through good behavior, creating a system in which discipline was rewarded while misconduct led to restrictions. The prison administration maintained a clear philosophy regarding inmate rights. Prisoners were entitled only to basic necessities such as food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Additional privileges, including recreation opportunities, access to reading materials, or contact with family members, were considered benefits that could be granted or withdrawn depending on an inmate's conduct. This approach reinforced the authority of prison officials and encouraged compliance with prison regulations. Guards underwent specialized training and were expected to enforce the rules consistently. Unlike in some prisons where personal influence or intimidation could affect treatment, Alcatraz officials sought to ensure that all inmates were treated according to the same standards. This reduced opportunities for favoritism and strengthened the institution's reputation for fairness combined with firmness. The prison also employed regular searches of cells and common areas to detect contraband such as homemade weapons, tools, or other prohibited items. Inspections could occur without warning, making it difficult for inmates to conceal materials that might threaten security. These procedures, combined with the island's isolated location, created multiple layers of protection against escape attempts and disturbances. Because of its strict rules, disciplined environment, and advanced security measures, Alcatraz became widely recognized as the most secure federal prison in the United States. Its reputation spread throughout the country, and many prisoners regarded a transfer to Alcatraz as one of the harshest consequences within the federal prison system. The institution's commitment to control, order, and security played a major role in establishing its legendary status in American history. Throughout its history as a federal prison, Alcatraz became the scene of numerous escape attempts by inmates determined to regain their freedom. The prison's harsh conditions, strict rules, and isolated location motivated many prisoners to dream of escaping, despite the enormous risks involved. For some inmates, the desire for freedom was so strong that they were willing to face severe punishment, dangerous waters, and even the possibility of death in pursuit of an escape. From the time Alcatraz opened as a federal prison in 1934 until its closure in 1963, dozens of prisoners participated in various escape attempts. Some tried to overpower guards, while others developed elaborate plans that required months of preparation. Inmates often searched for weaknesses in the prison security system, studying guard routines, cell structures, and opportunities to acquire tools or materials that could assist them. Because prison officials were aware of these possibilities, they maintained constant vigilance and conducted regular inspections to prevent escape plans from developing. Many escape attempts were discovered before they could be carried out. Guards frequently uncovered hidden tools, homemade weapons, and other items prisoners intended to use. Some inmates attempted to cut through bars, tunnel through walls, or access restricted areas of the prison. Others sought ways to reach the shoreline, hoping to find a method of crossing the bay. These plans often required patience, secrecy, and cooperation among multiple prisoners, making them difficult to execute successfully without attracting attention. The prison's location created a major obstacle for anyone who managed to leave the cell blocks. Even after escaping the prison building itself, inmates still had to contend with the cold waters of San Francisco Bay, powerful currents, strong winds, and changing tides. Many prisoners understood that reaching the water was only the first step in an extremely dangerous journey. The natural barriers surrounding the island were often as effective as the prison's physical security measures. One of the most dramatic escape attempts occurred in May 1946 during an event later known as the Battle of Alcatraz. A group of inmates seized weapons and took control of parts of the prison in an effort to escape. The confrontation resulted in intense fighting between prisoners and authorities, causing multiple deaths and injuries. The incident demonstrated both the determination of some inmates and the lengths to which prison officials would go to maintain control of the institution. The repeated escape attempts contributed significantly to Alcatraz's reputation and public image. Newspapers across the country reported on these incidents, often portraying them as dramatic contests between desperate prisoners and one of the most secure prison systems ever created. Stories of escape plans, failed attempts, and daring schemes fascinated the public and helped transform Alcatraz into a legendary institution known around the world. For many inmates, the possibility of escape represented hope in an environment defined by strict discipline and isolation. Even though most attempts ended in failure, the persistence of prisoners who continued to challenge the prison's security became an important part of Alcatraz's history and mythology. Their efforts highlighted both the human desire for freedom and the extraordinary measures that made Alcatraz one of the most secure prisons in American history. Among all the escape attempts in Alcatraz's history, the most famous occurred in June 1962 and remains one of the greatest prison mysteries in the United States. The escape involved 3 inmates, Frank Morris and brothers John England and Clarence England. Their daring plan, careful preparation, and unexplained disappearance captured the imagination of the public and continue to fascinate historians, investigators, and visitors today. The escape was not a sudden act but the result of months of planning. The 3 prisoners discovered that the walls surrounding the ventilation openings at the back of their cells were weakened by moisture and age. Using simple tools, including improvised drills made from stolen materials, they gradually enlarged the openings without attracting the attention of guards. To conceal their work, they covered the holes with carefully painted cardboard panels that blended with the cell walls. Behind the cells was an unguarded utility corridor that provided access to other parts of the prison structure. After creating large enough openings, the inmates crawled through the holes and entered this hidden area. They then climbed to the roof through service passages and continued preparing for their escape. Throughout the process, they worked mostly at night while masking the sounds of drilling with music played during recreation periods. One of the most remarkable aspects of the plan was the creation of lifelike dummy heads. The prisoners crafted these heads using soap, plaster, toilet paper, and real human hair collected from the prison barbershop. On the night of the escape, They placed the dummy heads on their pillows and arranged blankets to resemble sleeping bodies. During routine checks, guards looking through the cell bars believed the prisoners were asleep, allowing the escapees valuable time before their absence was discovered. The men also constructed an inflatable raft and life jackets from more than 50 stolen raincoats. These materials were carefully sewn and sealed together using methods they developed inside the prison. According to investigators, the raft was intended to carry them across the dangerous waters of San Francisco Bay and toward freedom. The level of creativity, patience, and engineering involved in the project demonstrated the extraordinary effort that went into the escape. On the night of June 11, 1962, Morris and the Anglin brothers put their plan into action. They left their cells, climbed through the prison structure, reached the roof, and made their way to the shoreline. From there, they launched their homemade raft into the darkness. When guards discovered the escape the following morning, a massive search operation was launched involving prison officials, the Coast Guard, law enforcement agencies, and military personnel. Despite extensive searches by air, land, and sea, the three men were never found. Investigators later recovered some personal belongings and pieces of equipment believed to be connected to the escape, but no definitive proof of the men's fate was ever discovered. Authorities officially concluded that the escapees likely drowned in the cold waters and strong currents of the bay. However, because no bodies were recovered, many people questioned this conclusion. Over the years, numerous theories emerged regarding what happened after the prisoners left the island. Some believe they perished shortly after entering the water, while others argue that they successfully reached the mainland and lived under new identities. Alleged sightings, family stories, anonymous letters, and various reports have fueled speculation for decades. The absence of conclusive evidence has allowed the mystery to endure and become one of the most debated escape stories in American history. The 1962 escape gained worldwide attention through books, documentaries, television programs, and films. It transformed Alcatraz from a highly secure prison into the setting of one of the most intriguing, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The escape demonstrated that even the most heavily guarded institutions could be challenged by determination, ingenuity, and careful planning, making the story of Morris and the Anglin brothers one of the most enduring chapters in the history of Alcatraz. Although Alcatraz had earned a reputation as the most secure prison in the United States, it was officially closed on March 21, 1963. The decision to shut down the prison was not due to a lack of security or a decrease in its effectiveness. Instead, the primary reasons were the extremely high costs of operating the facility and the growing maintenance problems caused by its aging infrastructure and isolated location. Operating a prison on an island was far more expensive than running a prison on the mainland. Unlike other correctional institutions, Alcatraz could not produce many of its own supplies or easily receive deliveries. Nearly everything required for daily operations had to be transported by boat from the mainland. Food, drinking water, fuel, medical supplies, construction materials, and other necessities were regularly shipped across San Francisco Bay. This transportation process required additional equipment, personnel, and resources, significantly increasing operating expenses. One of the prison's greatest challenges was its lack of a natural freshwater source. Every day, thousands of gallons of fresh water had to be brought to the island to meet the needs of inmates, guards, and their families who lived there. Water was essential for drinking, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and sanitation. The continuous transportation of water added substantially to the institution's yearly costs and made Alcatraz much more expensive to operate than other federal prisons. The prison buildings themselves were also deteriorating. Much of the facility had originally been constructed decades before Alcatraz became a federal prison. Constant exposure to saltwater, ocean winds, moisture, and changing weather conditions caused extensive corrosion and structural damage. Metal bars, pipes, railings, and support structures gradually weakened due to rust. Concrete walls and foundations showed signs of wear, and many systems required major repairs or complete replacement. Maintenance crews worked continuously to keep the prison functional, but the aging structures demanded increasingly costly repairs. Experts estimated that millions of dollars would be needed to renovate and modernize the facility. Significant improvements would have been required for plumbing, electrical systems, heating equipment, security infrastructure, and building safety. Federal officials ultimately concluded that investing such a large amount of money in the island prison was not practical. At the same time, newer prisons were being constructed on the mainland. These modern facilities could house more inmates, provide updated security systems, and operate at a much lower cost. Advances in correctional design allowed prison administrators to achieve high levels of security without relying on an isolated island location. As a result, Alcatraz gradually became less economically justifiable despite its famous reputation. The prison's average operating costs were considerably higher than those of other federal institutions. Government officials determined that taxpayers were spending far more to maintain Alcatraz than comparable prisons elsewhere in the country. When combined with the increasing repair expenses and logistical difficulties of supplying the island, closure became the most practical option from an administrative and financial perspective. When Alcatraz ceased operations in 1963, its remaining inmates were transferred to other federal prisons across the United States. Guards, administrative staff, and their families also left the island. The closure marked the end of nearly 3 decades of service as a federal penitentiary. Although the prison no longer housed inmates, its reputation, history, and stories continued to attract public interest long after its doors were closed. The abandoned buildings remained a powerful reminder of one of the most famous correctional institutions ever operated by the United States government. Although Alcatraz stopped operating as a federal prison in 1963, its significance did not end with its closure. Over the years, the island transformed from a former correctional facility into one of the most visited historical attractions in the United States. Today, Alcatraz Island attracts millions of visitors from around the world who come to explore its fascinating history, learn about its famous inmates, and experience firsthand the environment that once housed some of America's most notorious criminals. Located in the middle of San Francisco Bay, the island offers visitors a unique opportunity to step inside a place that has become deeply embedded in American culture. Tourists travel by ferry from San Francisco to reach the island, where they can walk through the prison cell blocks, administrative areas, recreation yards, and other parts of the historic complex. Many visitors are particularly interested in seeing the small prison cells where inmates lived and learning about the daily routines that governed life inside the institution. One of the most popular features of the island is the self-guided audio tour, which allows visitors to hear stories from former correctional officers and prisoners who experience life at Alcatraz. These first-hand accounts provide valuable insights into the prison's strict regulations, security procedures, and unique atmosphere. Through these narratives, visitors gain a deeper understanding of the challenges faced by both inmates and staff during the prison's years of operation. Alcatraz is not remembered solely for its prison history. The island also played important roles before and after its time as a federal penitentiary. Prior to becoming a prison, it served as a military fortress and military prison because of its strategic location at the entrance to San Francisco Bay. After the prison closed, the island became the site of a significant Native American occupation from 1969 to 1971, an event that brought national attention to indigenous rights and activism in the United States. This additional chapter of history has become an important part of the island's educational programs and exhibits. The preservation of Alcatraz allows historians, researchers, and visitors to study an important period in the development of the American prison system. The buildings, cell blocks, guard towers, and other structures remain as physical reminders of past correctional practices and security methods. Walking through these spaces provides a powerful sense of what life was like within one of the most secure prisons ever operated by the federal government. Alcatraz has also become a major symbol in popular culture. Countless books, documentaries, television programs, and films have been inspired by the island and its history. Stories about famous inmates, daring escape attempts, and the prison's harsh conditions have helped create an enduring public fascination. The mysterious 1962 escape, in particular, continues to attract attention and remains one of the most discussed events associated with the island. Beyond its historical significance, the island offers spectacular views of the surrounding bay, the city skyline, and the famous Golden Gate Bridge. Visitors often combine their interest in history with the opportunity to experience one of the most scenic locations in California. The contrast between the beautiful surroundings and the prison's harsh past creates a memorable experience that leaves a lasting impression on many people. Today, Alcatraz stands as both a historical monument and an educational resource. Its preserved buildings, museum exhibits, and guided tours allow future generations to learn about crime, punishment, prison administration, social change, and the individuals whose lives became connected to the island. Through its combination of history, mystery, architecture, and cultural significance, Alcatraz continues to captivate visitors and remains one of the most recognized landmarks in the United States.